They cried to the stars for help, but Earth's monsters answered. Cities were crumbling under floods, storms, and earthquakes, while forests and farmlands withered under relentless heat. Humanity had fought to survive for decades, but every solution seemed temporary, every innovation a stopgap. Doctor. Ilara Voss stood on the edge of a cliff overlooking the ruins of what had once been the coastal city of Nova Haven. The wind whipped her hair around her face, carrying the distant scent of salt, smoke, and decay. She pulled her coat tighter around herself. Even with the high-tech suits designed to filter toxins, the air always carried a bite of danger. Her gaze fell on the horizon, where the ocean met the sky in a dull line. That line had always represented hope. Now, it was just another reminder of what had been lost. Ilara was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied life, but not the ordinary plants or animals anymore. Her research had shifted years ago to the strange, mutated creatures that now roamed the Earth. These creatures had emerged quietly at first, appearing in remote regions, but over time they had spread, growing larger and stranger with each generation. No one understood exactly why, though many suspected human interference in nature had accelerated the mutations. Her eyes scanned the distant waters. A ripple broke the ocean's surface, almost as if it were breathing. Somewhere beneath the waves, the world was changing faster than anyone could keep up with. Inside the research station nearby, alarms were going off. Screens flashed red with urgent warnings. "Ilara, you need to see this," called Dr. Malik Reyes, her colleague, his voice tight with tension. She strode inside, boots echoing against the metal floor. The station was cramped but filled with technology, much of it salvaged from older laboratories and repurposed for survival. On the main screen, a live feed from one of the city drones showed a massive shape moving through the ruins of downtown Nova Haven. At first, it looked like a shadow among the broken buildings. Then slowly, its shape became clear. It was enormous, taller than any skyscraper. Its skin was rough and dark, almost rock-like, with strange, glowing veins that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Its eyes, if they could be called that, glimmered faintly as it scanned the city, almost with purpose. Ilara's heart pounded. "It's one of the new mutations," she whispered. "It's huge," Malik frowned. "We've seen reports of these everywhere. They're different now. Smarter, more organized, and more aggressive." Ilara's mind raced. They had studied smaller creatures, learned their patterns, observed their behavior, but nothing prepared her for this scale. Humanity had tried to fight the monsters with weapons, with traps, with every tool they could muster, but nothing seemed to work. Conventional firepower barely even slowed them down. A heavy silence filled the room as the team watched the creature move. Then Ilara turned to the console where the new project was being prepared. For months, world leaders had debated, argued, and finally agreed on a desperate measure: send a signal to the stars. Not for help from other humans, but from whoever, or whatever, might be out there. "Are we really doing this?" Malik asked quietly. Ilara looked at him, her face grim. "We have no choice. If we fail, humanity fails." The signal was simple in concept, but monumental in implication. Encoded in a series of light pulses and radio waves, it contained a record of Earth's history, its beauty, its struggles, and its current desperation. They weren't just asking for help, they were pleading. "Broadcasting now," said one of the technicians. The machine hummed, sending the carefully crafted message into space, bouncing it toward the nearest star systems in the hopes that someone would see it, understand it, and respond. Ilara's stomach twisted as she watched the transmission complete. There was no immediate answer. There would not be. Messages to the stars traveled slowly across vast distances, and the silence afterward felt like an eternity. Outside, the wind howled. A deep rumble shook the cliffside, and Ilara looked down in alarm. The ground itself seemed to shiver. From the distance, she could see more shadows moving across the landscape, some running on all fours, others gliding or creeping like strange insects. Each one was different, some with more limbs, some with glowing eyes or scales that shimmered in the dark. And then the first roar echoed across the ruins. It was not loud in a normal sense, but it carried a strange resonance that made the bones ache. It was a sound of power, of intent, of warning. Ilara's heart sank. She had hoped the monsters would leave humans alone if ignored. She had hoped they were just mindless mutations. She had been wrong. For days after the signal, humanity waited, clinging to the fragile hope that some alien intelligence would answer. Meanwhile, the monsters multiplied. They adapted faster than anyone expected, almost as if Earth itself was changing in response to the plea for help. Communities barricaded themselves in abandoned cities. Children whispered prayers into the empty streets, hoping the stars would hear them. Scientists worked around the clock, attempting to find weaknesses to understand behavior to communicate. One night in the lab, Ilara watched the monitors. She could see patterns emerging in the monsters' movements. It wasn't chaos. It was organization, almost intentional. She shivered. If these creatures were responding to the message, they were doing so in ways humanity could not yet comprehend. On the horizon, a shape began to rise from the ruins of the old industrial district. It was larger than any creature she had ever seen, and it moved slowly, deliberately. Unlike the smaller monsters, it did not attack immediately. Instead, it paused, almost as if studying the city, studying the humans within it. Ilara swallowed hard. "Malik, I think they heard us." Malik's eyes widened. "No, that's impossible. They can't understand." Before he could finish, the creature let out another roar, low and vibrating, sending tremors through the ground. But it was different from the previous roars. It was almost a response. For the first time, fear mingled with a strange flicker of hope in Ilara's mind. Perhaps humanity had not reached the end. Perhaps, in some mysterious way, Earth itself, or whatever force had created these monsters, was answering their call. She turned away from the screen and looked at the stars peeking through the smoky sky. The message had been sent, and now something was answering. But it was not what they expected. It was bigger. It was stranger. It was Earth itself standing up to protect or challenge its own children. Ilara knew one thing for certain: humanity would have to face the monsters, not just as enemies, but as something more, something that might teach them how to survive. The cliff trembled beneath her feet, and in the distance, she saw dozens of monsters moving toward the city. Some ran on 4 legs, others crawled like colossal insects. The largest among them, the one that had paused in the industrial district, raised its head toward the sky. Its glowing veins pulsed brighter as if reacting to something unseen. Ilara whispered almost to herself, "We asked for help, and it came." But it was not the kind of help anyone had imagined. The ground shook again, stronger this time. Trees snapped like twigs and broken buildings toppled in clouds of dust. Humans scattered, screaming as the monsters approached. Yet in the chaos, there was a strange order. The creatures moved with purpose, not random destruction. They seemed to target areas of devastation, the worst polluted regions first, leaving other parts untouched. Ilara's mind raced. These creatures were not mindless. They were judging, testing, observing, and maybe, just maybe, they were offering a chance for humanity to change. As night fell, the sky above Nova Haven lit up with flashes from distant fires and glowing veins from the monsters themselves. Ilara stood at the cliff, watching, waiting, wondering what the next day would bring. The stars were still out there, distant and silent. But the monsters, Earth's own strange children, had arrived. And humanity's survival had just entered a new, uncertain chapter. The morning sun struggled to break through the heavy clouds over Nova Haven. The city had once been vibrant, a hub of human life and technology, but now it was a landscape of rubble, ash, and silence. Fires smoldered in the distance, and the streets were littered with debris from buildings that had not withstood the monsters' arrival. Doctor. Ilara Voss walked cautiously along a cracked street with Malik Reyes at her side. Both were dressed in protective suits, though the air had cleared enough for masks to filter most of the ash. The sounds of distant roars still echoed through the ruined city, a constant reminder that the monsters had not disappeared. Ilara's eyes scanned the surroundings. The creatures had moved methodically through the city overnight. Entire districts were flattened, yet some areas remained untouched. She bent down to examine a small park, surprisingly intact amid the devastation. The grass was scorched, but the trees stood, twisted but alive. A faint glow of bioluminescence pulsed along the veins of plants, as though they had absorbed some energy from the monsters. "They didn't destroy everything," Malik said, voice low. "It's almost like they chose." Ilara nodded slowly. "Yes, I've been studying the patterns." The monsters seemed to target areas of extreme human impact. Factories, refineries, dumps, places where humans hurt the Earth the most. Malik frowned. "So they're punishing us?" "I wouldn't call it punishment," Ilara said. "It's more like a test. A way to show us that our actions have consequences, and maybe a chance to survive if we learn from them." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden movement. From the shadow of a collapsed building, a creature emerged. It was smaller than the giants that had roamed the industrial district, but its appearance was no less terrifying. Its skin was mottled gray, almost like cracked stone, with long tendrils wriggling from its back. Its eyes glowed faintly green, and it tilted its head as if studying them. Alara froze, holding her breath. Malik instinctively reached for his stun weapon, but she shook her head. "Wait," she whispered. "It's not attacking." The creature took a cautious step forward, then another. It sniffed the air, making a low, vibrating hum. Alara noticed that when it made this sound, nearby plants trembled slightly, as if responding. Malik looked at her incredulously. "You're saying it's trying to communicate?" Alara's mind raced. All her life she had studied life forms, tried to understand signals and patterns, but this was something entirely new. "I think, yes, and I think it's listening to us too." The creature continued moving closer, its movements slow and deliberate. Alara knelt and placed a hand on the cracked pavement. She spoke softly, almost a whisper. "We don't want to hurt you, we just want to understand." The creature paused, then made a series of vibrating hums that echoed in the empty street. Its glowing eyes seemed to focus on her, as if acknowledging the words she had not even fully formed. Malik exhaled slowly. "I don't know if I trust this thing." Alara looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "We don't have a choice. If we want to survive, we have to try." Over the next few hours, they observed the creature. It didn't attack and it didn't flee. Instead, it moved with a strange intelligence, exploring the area, touching objects, and even avoiding human shelters. Alara began to notice patterns in its behavior. Certain gestures, certain vibrations, seemed to correspond to curiosity or caution. She set up a small device to emit controlled sound pulses, mimicking the vibrations the creature had made. To her amazement, the creature responded. It tilted its head, its glowing eyes pulsing in rhythm with the signals. Slowly, carefully, Alara realized they had made contact. "This changes everything," she said, voice trembling with excitement. "We can communicate, we can learn from them." But as the morning stretched into afternoon, news from other regions arrived, carried by drones and satellites. Monsters were appearing everywhere, and not all were as calm as the one she had encountered. In some areas, entire towns were being destroyed. People were panicking, fleeing, hiding wherever they could. In a makeshift command center, world leaders and scientists debated the next steps. Some argued for evacuation. Others demanded military action. Still others suggested studying the monsters, learning from them before making any rash moves. Alara spoke up during the meeting, her voice steady despite the tension. "We have proof that some monsters can respond to human signals. They're not purely hostile. They might even help us if we approach them the right way. Attacking them blindly will only make things worse." A military general scoffed. "Help us with what? They've destroyed half the cities we've surveyed." "You're talking about negotiation with giants that can crush tanks like toys." Alara met his gaze. "If we continue to see them only as enemies, we'll be destroyed. If we learn from them, we might survive. That's the difference." Meanwhile, in the city streets, other creatures were behaving differently. Some were hunting, yes, but even then, they seemed to avoid areas where humans were showing care for the land. A small group of survivors discovered that if they nurtured plants, cleaned polluted areas, or avoided waste, monsters often passed without attacking. Alara and Malik continued their fieldwork, venturing further into the ruins. They observed a colossal creature in the distance, taller than any building they had seen. It moved slowly, almost majestically, its glowing veins pulsing in a rhythmic pattern. As it walked, smaller monsters seemed to follow it, forming a strange procession. Alara whispered, "It's leading them or organizing them." Malik shook his head. "Organized monsters? I never thought I'd see the day." As the day went on, more humans began to experiment with nonviolent methods. Signals, gestures, and careful environmental stewardship were tried in different regions. Reports came in of monsters retreating when humans acted responsibly. It became clear that the monsters were not mindless forces of destruction. They were responding to actions and intentions. By evening, Alara returned to her station to review the day's data. She was exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time, she saw a path forward. Humanity could survive not by fighting but by learning. Suddenly, a warning alarm blared. The monitors showed a new threat, a group of massive monsters moving toward a settlement nearby. Unlike the calm creature she had encountered earlier, these were moving with purpose and aggression. Fires broke out along their path. Ilara's heart raced. "They're attacking," she muttered. Malik looked grim. "Some of them, they might never listen. They might be impossible to reason with." Ilara shook her head. "Then we find a way to show them we're different. We have to try." She quickly prepared a field device to emit harmonic pulses, an experimental signal designed to communicate human intent and peaceful intentions. As they moved toward the approaching monsters, Ilara could feel the ground trembling beneath her feet. The air was thick with tension, the distant roars echoing like drums of warning. When they reached a clearing, the monsters slowed. Their glowing eyes focused on Ilara and Malik. The largest among them raised its head, emitting a deep, vibrating sound. Ilara activated the device, sending rhythmic pulses into the air. The creature paused, its glowing veins brightening. Then it tilted its head, emitting a softer hum in response. Malik's eyes widened. "It's reacting to you," Ilara nodded. "It understands, not in words but in action. It feels intent." The monsters lingered, watching, listening, and for a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the smaller creatures began to move away, leaving the clearing. The largest monster remained for a moment longer, pulsing in rhythm with the signal. Finally, it turned and walked back toward the ruins, seemingly satisfied. Ilara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "This is it. This is how we survive, not by weapons, not by fear, but by learning to communicate and respect." As night fell, the city was quiet again. Fires smoldered in the distance, but the monsters had temporarily retreated. Ilara looked at the sky, faint stars peeking through the gray clouds. Somewhere out there, the message to the stars still floated, waiting for an answer. And now, Earth itself had begun answering in its own way, through creatures of immense power and intelligence. Humanity's survival would not be easy, but a glimmer of hope had appeared among the ruins. Ilara sat on the edge of the station's observation deck, tired but determined. She knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, new monsters, and perhaps new lessons. But for the first time, she felt that survival was not just a dream, it was a possibility. Somewhere in the darkness, a low roar echoed, distant but not threatening. The monsters were out there, watching, listening, and judging. Humanity had been tested, and the first step toward coexistence had begun. Ilara whispered into the night, almost to herself, "We can do this. We have to." The wind carried her words across the empty streets, and for the first time in years, they did not feel entirely lost. The sun barely pierced the heavy gray clouds over Nova Haven as Dr. Ilara Voss and Malik Reyes prepared for another day in the ruined city. The previous encounters with the monsters had changed everything. Humanity no longer saw them only as enemies. Some of the creatures could listen, respond, and even understand patterns in human behavior. Ilara adjusted the small harmonic device strapped to her arm. It pulsed with a soft light, sending vibrations into the air in patterns designed to mimic the creature's own communication. She had spent hours studying recordings of the previous day's interactions, trying to understand the rhythm, the timing, and the subtle nuances in the sounds the monsters made. "We'll have only one chance to get this right," she told Malik, who was checking the backup equipment. "If we make a mistake, we could provoke them, or worse, we could scare them away completely." Malik sighed. "You make it sound like negotiating with the stars, not fighting monsters." "Maybe we are," Ilara said, glancing at the distant skyline. Smoke rose in columns from ruined buildings, and faint glowing veins shimmered in the forests beyond. "These creatures are more than just animals. They're part of Earth itself, and if we want to survive, we have to speak its language." They set out toward a district that had been heavily damaged by the largest monster they had encountered earlier. Buildings were twisted, streets were cracked, and vehicles lay overturned. Despite the destruction, plants had begun to grow in cracks and abandoned lots, as if nature was reclaiming the city at the same time the monsters were patrolling it. "Ilara, over here," Malik whispered, pointing to a pile of rubble. Small creatures, no taller than a human, were rummaging through debris. Their skin was a dull gray with faint glowing patterns, and their movements were precise, almost careful. Unlike the larger monsters, they didn't seem aware of humans nearby. Ilara knelt, studying them through her portable scanner. "They're observing," she said quietly, "not attacking, not hiding, just watching." The harmonic device pulsed gently in her hand. She began sending signals, short vibrations in sequences she had tested before. The small creatures paused, their heads turning in unison. Then they moved closer, following the rhythm of the pulses. Malik blinked in astonishment. They're responding like music, Alara nodded. Yes, and I think we can teach them patterns. Small signals first, then more complex ones. They spent hours experimenting. At first, the creatures mimicked simple vibrations. A quick pulse meant curiosity, a longer pulse meant caution. Slowly, Alara realized they were beginning to understand sequences, almost like learning a language. She felt a thrill of hope, the first step toward communication. But not all creatures were so easy to reach. As they moved deeper into the ruined district, a sudden roar shook the air. From the edge of a collapsed skyscraper, a massive monster emerged. Its glowing veins were brighter than ever, and its eyes focused sharply on Alara and Malik. "Back away slowly," Malik said, but Alara held up her hand. "No," she said firmly, "it's listening." The monster took a few slow steps forward. Its roar vibrated through the ground, a deep rumble that made the air feel thick. Alara activated the harmonic device, sending a series of longer pulses designed to convey peaceful intent. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the monster paused, its glowing veins dimming slightly. It tilted its massive head, as if processing the signals. Slowly, it stepped closer, matching the rhythm of the pulses with its own low, vibrating hum. Alara's heart pounded. "It's responding. It's actually responding." Malik stared in disbelief. "I don't believe it. It's huge, and it's actually listening." Alara smiled faintly. "Not just listening. It's trying to understand. That's the first step." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly. They discovered that different tones and pulse patterns conveyed different intentions. A short, rising pulse signaled curiosity. A long, steady pulse signaled peace. Combining sequences allowed them to indicate warnings, directions, and even simple emotions. One evening, while observing a group of monsters from a safe distance, Alara noticed something unexpected. The creatures were interacting with each other using similar vibrations. Smaller monsters were responding to the larger ones, following their patterns and even imitating subtle gestures. Earth itself, it seemed, was alive with a form of intelligence humans had never understood. "This is incredible," Malik said. "It's not just that they respond to us, they have their own communication. They're organized." Alara nodded, her eyes bright with excitement. "Exactly. If we can learn their language, we can negotiate, coordinate, even coexist." But the progress came with risks. A small group of monsters suddenly approached their observation post, larger than anything they had encountered before. Panic rippled through the team, but Alara stayed calm. She activated the harmonic device, sending signals in careful sequences. The creatures paused, their massive heads tilting in unison. They emitted low, resonating hums and slowly, one by one, began to retreat. The team breathed a collective sigh of relief. Alara knew that patience, observation, and understanding were the keys. Violence would only escalate conflict. By demonstrating intent and learning to speak, humanity could begin to rebuild its relationship with the planet itself. The days turned into weeks. Reports came from other regions. Humans using similar harmonic signals had calmer encounters with monsters. Some creatures even assisted in protecting settlements from others that were more aggressive. A new pattern emerged. Humans who respected the land, nurtured plants, and minimized destruction were often spared or even guided. Alara and Malik decided to test this further. They ventured into a forest that had been untouched by human activity for decades. Here, the monsters were abundant, ranging from small, scuttling creatures to towering behemoths. Alara began sending a sequence that indicated curiosity and peace. One of the smaller monsters approached cautiously, sniffing the air. It emitted a soft hum that matched the rhythm of the device. Slowly, it touched Alara's hand with one of its tendrils. She flinched, but the touch was gentle, exploratory. Malik watched, amazed. It trusts you," Alara smiled. "Or it's testing us. Trust is a two-way street." Over time, they discovered that humans could use patterns of care to influence the creatures. Planting trees, cleaning waterways, and avoiding pollution seemed to send positive signals. The monsters responded with less aggression, more curiosity, and in some cases, protection. But there were challenges. Not all monsters responded positively. Some were territorial or aggressive, likely triggered by damage or destruction in their area. Alara realized that learning the language of the monsters was only part of the solution. human behavior had to change as well. Late one night, while reviewing data in the lab, Ilara made a startling observation. A colossal monster that had once roamed the industrial district was moving in a deliberate pattern, almost like a patrol. But instead of attacking, it seemed to be assessing the environment. Its glowing veins pulsed in a steady rhythm, matching patterns from their experiments. "It's monitoring us," Ilara whispered, "not to destroy, but to see if we can survive." Malik leaned over her shoulder, astonished. "So Earth is testing us through them?" "Yes," Ilara said. "The monsters are Earth's way of responding. They're teaching us, judging us, and guiding us. And if we fail, we won't just lose to the monsters. We'll lose ourselves." The next morning, Ilara led a small team deeper into the ruins, carrying devices and sensors. They encountered a group of monsters blocking their path. Instead of retreating, Ilara activated the harmonic device and sent a carefully crafted sequence. The monsters paused. The largest among them stepped forward, eyes glowing, veins pulsing. It tilted its massive head and emitted a low, resonating hum. Slowly, the others began to back away, forming a path for the humans to pass. Ilara's heart raced. "It worked. We created a path. They're cooperating." Malik shook his head, still in awe. "I never thought I'd see the day humans and monsters cooperate." Ilara smiled, but her thoughts were already racing ahead. This was only the beginning. The real challenge would be to teach humanity as a whole how to communicate, to act responsibly, and to coexist with the creatures and with Earth itself. By the end of the week, news from around the world confirmed a shift. Humans who approached monsters with care and intent, who respected the land and learned to communicate, experienced less destruction. Entire settlements survived where before they would have been lost. Ilara watched the monsters moving through the forest, their glowing veins illuminating the dark undergrowth. Some followed paths humans had cleared, others moved independently but cautiously. It was as if the creatures were guiding humanity, showing the way forward without force. As night fell, she and Malik returned to the observation deck of their station. Below them, monsters patrolled, glowed, and hummed in patterns that were slowly becoming understandable. Ilara whispered to the night sky, "We're learning to speak. And in doing so, maybe we can survive. Maybe we can finally become the humans Earth intended us to be." Malik nodded silently. The monsters were out there, vast, intelligent, and alive. Humanity's fight was no longer just against them. It was a fight to understand, to adapt, and to prove that they were worthy of survival. Somewhere in the distant stars, the message they had sent continued to float. And perhaps one day someone, or something, was listening. For now, though, the monsters had answered, and humanity had to learn how to listen. The city of Nova Haven was quiet that morning, but the quiet was heavy, filled with tension. Humanity had begun to realize that survival depended on more than weapons or walls. It depended on understanding. Dr. Ilara Voss stood at the edge of the observation deck, looking out at the ruins and forests beyond. In the distance, she could see the massive forms of monsters moving, their glowing veins lighting the dim landscape like living lanterns. "Are you ready for this?" Malik asked, adjusting the straps on his pack. Ilara nodded. "We've seen enough to know that some of them respond to us. Some are willing to cooperate. Today, we see if we can take the next step, an alliance, not just survival but partnership." Malik glanced at the horizon where the largest monster, the one they had been observing for weeks, stood motionless as if waiting. "I still don't understand them. How do we know they want an alliance?" Ilara turned to him. "We don't. But if we show them we want peace, that we're willing to learn and act responsibly, we can start. That's all we can do." The plan was simple in theory but dangerous in practice. A small team of scientists and survivors, led by Ilara, would approach the monster directly, using the harmonic device to communicate intent and goodwill. They would show that humans could cooperate, that they could follow rules and respect the Earth. As they moved through the ruins, smaller monsters scattered around them, observing from a distance. Ilara sent a steady sequence of vibrations through her device, signaling peace and curiosity. The smaller creatures responded with soft hums, matching the rhythm but not approaching too closely. The team reached a large clearing where the massive monster waited. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its skin shimmered in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Ilara activated the device, sending a complex series of pulses designed to convey intent. "We come in peace, we wish to cooperate, we respect your power." The monster paused. For a long moment it did nothing. Then it let out a low, resonating hum deep enough to shake the ground. Its glowing veins pulsed in time with the device. Slowly it stepped forward, careful but deliberate. Alara's heart raced. "It's responding, we're being accepted." Malik whispered. "Accepted? That's more than I expected." Over the next hour, the team moved closer. The monster did not attack, nor did it flee. Smaller monsters, sensing the change, approached cautiously, circling around the humans but maintaining distance. Alara realized that this was the first true sign of communication. Humanity was no longer completely alien to the monsters. Back at the command center, news from other regions echoed the same pattern. Humans who approached monsters respectfully, who demonstrated care for the land, found that the creatures responded in kind. Some helped guide humans away from danger zones, while others protected crops or cleared debris. Slowly, an understanding was forming. Alara and Malik worked tirelessly to document the patterns. They discovered that different sequences of pulses could indicate basic intentions: curiosity, caution, friendliness, warning. By combining sequences, they could suggest more complex ideas like safe zones, food sources, or guidance through dangerous areas. But cooperation required change on both sides. Humans had to prove they were willing to act responsibly, while the monsters tested them, responding only when they met certain standards. In one experiment, Alara's team cleaned a small polluted creek. Within hours, a group of small monsters returned, helping to clear debris and encouraging local plant growth. It was as if they understood the humans' effort and decided to assist. Malik shook his head in disbelief. "They're helping us. They're actually helping us." Alara smiled. "It's not help in the way we think. It's a response to action. They're showing us that cooperation has value." The breakthrough came when they encountered a group of aggressive monsters attacking a nearby settlement. The humans used the harmonic device to signal peaceful intent, but the creatures ignored them at first. Then, Alara noticed something. One of the larger monsters in the group hesitated, glancing toward the humans' devices. Slowly, it let out a hum that matched the sequence from the humans. One by one, the attacking monsters slowed, then stopped. It was a remarkable moment. The humans had demonstrated that they could influence behavior not through force, but through communication and respect. Alara realized that this was the essence of the alliance: trust, mutual recognition, and learning. Humans were no longer at the mercy of the monsters. They could work together, each species responding to the other's actions. In the following days, the alliance grew stronger. Humans began planting forests, restoring rivers, and cleaning polluted areas. In response, monsters guided them, protecting key regions from destruction and even preventing natural disasters in subtle ways. The largest monsters acted as guardians, moving through the landscape to maintain balance. Smaller monsters followed, assisting humans and monitoring behavior. Alara led a team deeper into a forested area that had been untouched for decades. Here, the monsters were numerous, ranging from small, quick creatures to towering behemoths. By sending rhythmic pulses and demonstrating care, humans were able to move among them without fear. Malik was astonished. "I never imagined this. Cooperation, coexistence, it's real." Alara nodded. "It's fragile, but it's real. If we continue to act responsibly, we can survive and maybe even thrive." The alliance was tested when a rogue group of humans, desperate for resources, attempted to attack the monsters in a nearby valley. They fired weapons, burned forests, and polluted streams. The monsters responded swiftly, defending themselves and neutralizing the threat without unnecessary destruction. Alara and Malik arrived just after the confrontation. The monsters had returned to their normal patterns, but their eyes glowed brightly, almost as if warning humanity to respect the rules. "This is exactly why we need the alliance," Alara said. "If humans act recklessly, we risk losing everything we've built." "Cooperation is fragile. We must maintain it," Malik nodded gravely. "And it's clear now force doesn't work. Only understanding, only respect, only learning." The breakthrough strengthened humanity's resolve. Governments and communities began restructuring. Cities were rebuilt with nature integrated into their design. Factories and power plants were relocated or redesigned to minimize environmental impact. Humans planted forests and restored rivers, guided by patterns learned from the monsters. Alara and her team documented every success. They discovered that certain monsters had specific roles. Some patrolled rivers, ensuring water remained clean. Others monitored forests, preventing fires, and the largest acted as protectors, maintaining order and balance. One evening, while observing a massive creature moving through a forest, Alara realized something astonishing. The monsters weren't just reacting, they were teaching. They demonstrated patterns of balance, showing humans where to plant, how to restore ecosystems, and even how to manage resources sustainably. "It's incredible," Malik whispered. "They're not just protecting Earth, they're teaching us how to live on it properly." Alara smiled faintly. "They are showing us that survival is about more than fighting. It's about understanding, cooperation, and respect." News of the alliance spread quickly. Regions that embraced the new relationship thrived, while areas that resisted suffered from continued attacks. Humanity began to recognize the importance of stewardship and responsibility. As weeks turned into months, the monsters became integral to daily life. Humans learned to communicate using simple harmonic signals, while monsters guided them in environmental restoration. Entire ecosystems began to recover, and the planet slowly healed from decades of damage. One evening, Alara stood atop a hill, looking at the glowing silhouettes of monsters patrolling the valley below. She could see humans planting trees, cleaning rivers, and rebuilding shelters with care. For the first time in decades, there was a sense of hope. Malik joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We did it. We're really doing it." Alara nodded. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. The alliance is fragile and humanity must continue to prove itself worthy. The monsters are patient, but they are watching, always watching." In the distance, the largest monster stopped and raised its massive head toward the sky. Its veins pulsed brighter, sending a wave of energy across the forest. Smaller monsters responded in kind, creating a synchronized display of light and sound. Alara felt a shiver of awe. "They're celebrating or acknowledging us. Either way, it's a sign that we're on the right path," Malik smiled. "I think they're proud of us." Alara laughed softly. "Pride might be too much to say, but maybe approval. Approval is enough." As night fell, the forest glowed with the bioluminescence of monsters and plants alike. The alliance was no longer just a hope. It was reality. Humanity had taken the first true steps toward coexistence, guided by the intelligence and power of Earth itself. Alara looked at the stars, distant and silent. The message they had sent long ago was still floating in the cosmos. Perhaps one day someone or something would respond. But for now, the answer had already come, not from the stars, but from Earth itself. And humanity had finally begun to learn how to speak. The morning sun rose over a changing world. Nova Haven, once a ruined city, now hummed with cautious life. Trees grew through cracks in the streets, rivers sparkled clear again, and humans moved alongside creatures that had once seemed unstoppable. The alliance had held for months, and the planet itself was beginning to heal. Doctor. Alara Voss stood at the edge of a hill, overlooking a valley where monsters and humans worked side by side. Small creatures scuttled among crops, helping clear debris, while the larger monsters patrolled forests and rivers, their glowing veins lighting the landscape like living beacons. Humans followed the creatures' guidance, planting trees in patterns suggested by their new allies, restoring the environment one careful step at a time. Malik Reyes arrived beside her, carrying a portable console filled with new data. "It's incredible," he said. "The areas they guide recover faster than we could ever manage alone. They're teaching us how to live in balance." Alara nodded. "Exactly. The monsters aren't just protecting Earth, they're showing us the way forward. If we can maintain this, humanity might finally survive and maybe even thrive." But peace was not guaranteed. Not all humans had embraced the alliance. Rogue groups still sought to exploit resources or attack the monsters. And even the creatures, patient as they were, had limits. Any reckless action could destroy the fragile trust humanity had built. That afternoon, alarms sounded across the valley. A massive creature, larger than any the team had observed before, approached the outskirts of the city. Its glowing veins were brighter than ever, and it moved with a slow, deliberate power. Smaller monsters followed in a procession, creating a corridor of light and sound. Alara grabbed her device. "This is it, the final test. If we handle this right, the alliance will be stronger than ever. If not—" Her voice trailed off, but Malik understood. Failure could undo months of progress. They approached the creature carefully. It stopped at the edge of the rebuilt settlement, its massive eyes scanning the humans below. Alara activated the harmonic device, sending a carefully crafted sequence: peace, respect, cooperation. For a long moment, the giant monster did nothing. Then it let out a deep, resonating hum. The sound vibrated through the ground, echoing across the valley. The humans held their breath. The smaller monsters responded, mirroring the rhythm in a display of unity. Alara whispered, "It's responding. They're acknowledging us." The massive creature stepped closer, each movement deliberate and careful. It circled the settlement as if inspecting the humans' actions. Slowly, it lowered its head, eyes glowing softly. Alara realized that this was not a threat. It was a recognition of humanity's efforts and intentions. Malik exhaled in relief. "They approve," Alara smiled. "Or at least they see that we're learning." With the final test passed, the monsters returned to their routines, patrolling and guiding, while humans continued rebuilding. Trust had been earned, and a new rhythm of life had begun. Alara and Malik moved deeper into the forest to observe the creatures' interactions. Here, humans were learning directly from the monsters. Some of the largest creatures demonstrated ways to prevent fires by moving leaves and branches strategically. Others guided humans to plant trees and crops in patterns that supported the ecosystem naturally. Even the smallest creatures assisted in tending water sources, clearing debris, and protecting young plants. Alara watched a small group of humans planting a grove of saplings under the guidance of a medium-sized monster. The creature emitted soft vibrations, and the humans responded in kind, following the rhythm as they worked. Slowly, the forest began to flourish again. Malik whispered, "It's like they're teaching us the language of Earth itself." Alara nodded. "Yes. And we're finally starting to understand it." The progress was not unnoticed. From the skies above, faint streaks of light appeared, distant signals, perhaps the response they had been waiting for when they first sent the message to the stars. Humanity had cried out for help long ago, and the answer had come in a form they had never expected: Earth's own creatures. And now something else was watching. Days later, the signals in the sky grew stronger. They weren't stars, they were ships, alien observers approaching cautiously, scanning the planet from orbit. Humanity held its breath. The monsters had remained calm, observing the new arrivals silently. Alara knew this was the final stage. Humanity had survived the monsters' trials. They had learned to communicate, to cooperate, and to respect the balance of life. Now they would be judged again, this time by beings from beyond the stars. The aliens' presence was not threatening, but it was clear and undeniable. Massive ships hovered above the planet, emitting pulses that resonated faintly with the monsters below. The creatures paused in their patrols, observing. Humans looked to Alara and Malik for guidance. Alara activated her harmonic device, sending a pattern designed to convey peace and cooperation. The monsters responded, their glowing veins pulsing in harmony. Then the alien ships responded with sequences of light and vibration that matched some of the patterns the humans had been using. Malik's eyes widened. "They understand us, or at least the signals we've developed." Alara smiled. "We've proven that humanity can listen, adapt, and work with Earth's creatures. Maybe now they'll see we're worthy." Over the next few hours, humans and monsters demonstrated their cooperation. Humans planted trees, tended rivers, and rebuilt habitats under the watchful guidance of the monsters. The aliens observed silently, occasionally sending signals that were mirrored by the creatures, as if confirming alignment. Finally, a massive ship descended slowly toward the largest cleared field in Nova Haven. A beam of light illuminated the monsters and humans alike. The creatures paused, tilting their heads toward the light, then returned to their routines. Alara stepped forward, holding the harmonic device high. She sent a final, coordinated signal of peace, respect, and cooperation. The beam of light flickered and pulsed in response. Slowly, the aliens' presence seemed to relax, as if acknowledging that humanity had passed their silent test. Malik exhaled, voice trembling. "We did it. We really did it." Alara nodded. "Yes, the monsters tested us, Earth tested us, and now the universe is watching. We've proven we can survive, not through force, but through understanding and respect." In the days that followed, the alien observers remained in orbit but did not intervene further. Their signals became less frequent, more observational. Humanity had earned the right to continue, to thrive, and to learn from the monsters. The alliance was stronger than ever, and the lessons of survival, cooperation, and respect were being shared across the planet. Ilara walked through a thriving forest with Malik at her side. The air smelled of fresh rain and growing plants. Small monsters darted through the underbrush, while larger ones moved gracefully above, patrolling and guiding. Humans worked alongside them, rebuilding homes, planting forests, and restoring rivers. Malik paused, watching a small child place a seedling in the soil. A tiny monster approached, gently nudging the sapling into the ground. The child laughed and the monster hummed in response, a low, vibrating sound of approval. Ilara smiled. This is the new Earth. Humans and monsters working together, learning from each other, respecting life. Malik nodded. It's beautiful and fragile, but maybe now we can get it right. As night fell, the sky above Nova Haven glittered with distant stars. The alien ships hovered silently, observing. The monsters patrolled below, glowing softly, their hums vibrating through the land. Humans rested, planning the next steps, learning, adapting. Ilara stood atop the hill, looking at the harmony below. We cried to the stars for help, she whispered, and Earth answered. Not in the way we expected, but in the way we needed most. And now we're ready to survive together. The wind carried her words across the valley. The monsters hummed softly in response, their glowing veins lighting the night. Somewhere beyond the stars, observers watched silently, and humanity waited patiently, ready to face whatever came next. For the first time in decades, hope was not just a dream. It was alive, glowing softly in the forests, pulsing through the monsters, and breathing quietly in the hearts of humans who had finally learned how to live in harmony with the world around them. A new Earth had begun,